Good morning, good afternoon. Let me welcome you to the Forum 2000 online debate. My name is Kateřina Procházková, and I'm moderator of today's debate. In recent months, in some cases, I would say years, we have seen more and more PRC hostile and aggressive actions in Hong Kong, in Xinjiang, and in the Western world as well. Beijing has been willing to break promises, agreements, and ignore human rights and laws. For example, in Hong Kong, the students' demonstrations were suppressed. The state security law was implemented last summer. And now the Hong Kong government has implemented changes to the city's electoral system. To discuss what this shows and what the consequences might be, I'm going to talk with Professor Xiao Qiang, American journalist, professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and also the founder and editor-in-chief of a news website called China Digital Times. Professor Xiao Qiang, welcome.
Thank you, Kateřina.
So let's start with Hong Kong. What have been the recent developments in Hong Kong? Can you tell us about the situation there as you watch it unfold and cover it for China Digital Times, please?
Yes. What's the deterioration of human rights and the rule of law in Hong Kong in the past year has been astounding. Chinese government essentially take over Hong Kong by breaking the promise of the one country, two system, including its legal system, including its entire election process, the legislative process, and starting to not only politically, but using the legal apparatus to suppress dissent, oppositional voices. And this new development is not entirely new. It has been developing over the decades, especially in the past 15 years. But since the coronavirus breaking out, in the entire world in the status of crisis. For some reason that Chinese state seized this moment to advance in a large scale of the political crackdown and control over the Hong Kong people and at the expense of Hong Kong people's basic freedom and the rule of law and the promise of one country system altogether. I also want to say this kind of aggressive behavior and suppressing democracy and human rights, Hong Kong is one very, very vivid example of it, and disregard international promises, treaties, or the international community's concern is a new pattern of the People's Republic of China. It is a new normal under President Xi Jinping, or the Secretary General of the Communist Party, Xi Jinping's dictatorship. The reason behind of it, at least one of them, from my research and perspective, is the fact that Chinese government recent years has built a most advanced digital technology for its domestic censorship and surveillance, and also become a sort of influential force in the world for the global authoritarianism. And with that as a sort of background, the Chinese Communist Party become bolder and bolder, to not only domestically becoming more repressive, including step over Hong Kong, including the treaties and everything, also internationally become more and more aggressive, imperialistic, and reckless, I would say.
Thank you. When you mention the digital Leninism, your specialization is CCP propaganda and artificial intelligence empowered state surveillance mechanism in China. So how are these two, propaganda and digital Leninism, important for the Chinese communist regime? You just mentioned it in Hong Kong, but how are they used in PRC?
Yeah. I have been engaging with a Chinese digital space, freedom expression, independent journalism, civic activism in the past 2 decades. I have witnessed that at the beginning of the new generation of digital communication technologies introduced into China, that it generated a new hope in the Chinese civil society, that I think this new technology will bring a greater freedom expression, greater connectivity between the citizens and in their autonomous actions, and ultimately will erode the authoritarian regime and to transform Chinese society to a democratic regime. That hope was embedded in the social and political development in China throughout late 90s and early 2000s. But the Chinese Communist Party caught up by their control. They shaped its legal system for its control and censorship. They blustered its censorship apparatus, make sure the information considered detrimental to the regime does not reach to the citizens. They expended vast sum of money to prop up Chinese companies to develop the surveillance technologies, those products which enable the authoritarian government model, and fostering the mass surveillance in every corner of society, from the so-called social credit system score or the sort of video surveillance they call Skynet project, Sharp Eyes project, which putting a video surveillance systems everywhere, every public place, every even village, town in China. Not even to mention in Xinjiang, when there's Uyghurs has this sort of large unsettling conflict for their autonomy, that Chinese government completely turned that place into a sort of technology dystopian, monitoring everybody, every action, particularly for the Uyghurs on their ethnic identity. This technology boosted authoritarianism is really a new thing because the emergent technology, for example, even just mobile phones itself, right? It gains the call logs. It has users' precise locations. It has your contacts, has your photos, and other informations of the users. Any country, that's a privacy concern. There is a vigorous debate and a battle between protect users' privacy and the company's interest to generate profit. But in China, those companies are directly either belong to the state, owned by the state, or directly working with the state with no difference. So the state has using those technologies and gathering those citizen data to directly use it, not just for companies' profit generating purpose, but for state political and social control manipulation purpose. And this powerful shift makes the Chinese government much bolder than before. They feel safer at home for their authoritarian regime, and they feel have certain comparative advantage that to export that model to the rest of the world. And that really generated a threat to a democracy and people's freedom around the globe today.
Very interesting when we are talking about the high tech, because China was the Western companies also helped China a lot. China's foreign technology acquisition activity has helped the rapid or enormous rise of the PRC into the superpower, and investment into the world technology cooperation, and also the involvement of Chinese students, I would say nationalistic Chinese students, have played quite important role. So could you tell us more about this? Do you see there a correlation
There is certainly. I mean, China. The whole fact that China has gained this economic growth since the past 4 decades was starting from the benefit of the globalization and attracting the foreign companies and investment, and then ultimately the technologies to China. And that was a natural part in China at the beginning, being embraced in a very positively, is a open door policy. But once it's developed, it's not that simple. That because the political regime does not want to change. Not only does it want to change, it using its authoritarian system to turn China into essentially a cheap labor place. There's no labor movement. There's a lack of environmental regulation. It only attract those global capitalists who are in favor of this low-cost production to produce this new system. But where else generate that wealth coming to? For China, mostly went to the state, not to the people. Not those workers working for the minimum salaries in Guangdong, Shenzhen, or anywhere in China without labor protection, without environmental regulation, etc. Yeah, but the Chinese state becoming much wealthier. And using that, they further suppress the society and deprive people's freedom, and to make sure they are the good work productive force, but nothing else. Yeah, not their political rights, not their individual freedom. Then they use this gained advantage to attract the foreign investment and technology, and develop this its own technical infrastructure, which further enhanced its advantage, right, both politically and economically, and now becoming internationally. For example, like say artificial intelligence, that is a cutting-edge technology in this decade and in the coming decade. But China not only have its own sort of massive corporate companies and user bases, but it has a centralized state planning investment, which no other countries has been putting that much into. It has a massive data because the user bases, there's no other countries actually can compete. Finally, the most importantly, there's no privacy concerns whatsoever. Yeah, and that put the the Chinese government or the authoritarian regime into a natural advantage over the democratic societies, which has much more restrict privacy laws and much more decentralized storage data, but China doesn't have it. That turns into an authoritarian regime's advantage. And in return, this digital authoritarianism, or this particular brand of Chinese digital authoritarianism, becoming stronger and bolder, and becoming a bigger threat to the rest of the world.
Thank you. When you were mentioning the state planning system, we from the Czech Republic, for ex-communist country, we can remember these things, but of course not in this scale that was happening now in China. I mentioned Czech Republic, so let me ask one question covering the Czech Republic a bit. Recently, the Czech media and the Czech audience have been paying a lot of attention to the Russian activities in the Czech Republic. So would you able to tell me or tell us more about the PRC, China and Russia cooperation, especially in tech or media field, that is your specialization?
Well, yes. This is really I'll say the worrying trend, which is PRC's expansion to the rest of the world, including in Europe, including in Central East Europe, is backed by this sort of heavy state-controlled and manipulated strategy for the PRC's interest, not only just economic profits. Again, it's not a normal trade. The political influence and even the digital domains, technology, media domain, information domains, penetration and influence is totally part of China's global expansion, right? So Chinese government understand the importance of in this technology domain, the information domain, both in the domestic political stability and economic political rise, but it's also leading now or competing with the United States particularly, but also in many part of Europe, that the global to shaping the future of those digital infrastructure and information space. This to me is really a great contest, if you want to call it, between autocracy and democracy. In 21st century or in digital information connected age. What happened in Czechoslovakia, those Chinese corporations advances interest and the political influence into Czech society is one of the sort of most explicit example of this epic battle. And we cannot, how to say this? We cannot underestimate, the significance of this this event itself, every particular battle itself, because this is really what a most pressing call of our time for everyone who loves freedom and democracy in the world.
Thank you for that. And I have one more question concerning Czech Republic. I would say my next question also overlaps with the Czech case. The Chinese company CFC and their activities in the Czech Republic. The current nominee for the position of the Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs is Mr. Kulhánek, a former employee of CFC. I know that China Digital Times also covered the whole CFC story with this debacle, with the conviction of Patrick Ho, head of one of the branches of the CFC. So how would you describe CFC and their activities in the United States and also abroad?
Well, put it in a very sort of short version of it. This incident is or this event itself, and Chinese company CFC is part of the not only sometimes even in disguise of a business agenda, is a political and strategic agenda behind it. In the Chinese political system, there is actually a name. There is a party organization called United Front, and there are names for pushing those companies for their political mission behind of their business mission. There's a special term of it. This is a difference between the Chinese Communist Party runs authoritarian regime than the normal democratic rule of law society. This untransparency of this political decision and state control behind of many of those business activities, investment activities, technology transfer activities, is really putting the open society, including Czech Republic, into a vulnerable place, because the authoritarian regime like China will explore those openness and the rule of law and freedom of information in those countries to advance its political strategic influences in the name of business activities. That we just have to see that's the reality and to recognize what it is and coming out and respond using the democratic society system, transparency, democratic consensus, debate as somehow into our strengths, and defend the strengths against being exploited by the authoritarian regime like Chinese government.
Thank you. That also means that we should be careful to have these people into our government.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, because the political influence doesn't mean, it means many things, particularly means the political and informational influence in your own society, of your own political, economic arena. Yeah.
Thank you. I think our time is quite running, so we have time for last question. I would like to ask about the international audience. Are Western democracies finally taking a more active approach to these problems and to China as well? And could you please maybe compare the US approach as a US citizen with the European one?
Well, I am a U.S. citizen and I live in the United States for over 30 years. But I was born in China. I grew up in China. And to me, looking at how China's development changes and this new rising digital authoritarian regime is a, how to say this? I see that many people in the United States, not everybody, but many of them, free to see this is China's becoming to challenge the U.S. dominant power. To see this is a context between a rising sort of economic power threatening the existing dominant power, which I see that's certainly a framework to look at it. But that's not mine. I look at it as a global citizen. I look at a democratic value and freedom in every society, particularly in those societies who already established those values, such as in Europe, in United States, and in many parts of the world. I see the rising Chinese digital authoritarianism as a threat to all of these values and those societies together. Yeah. If we call that as a fundamental epic battle, yeah, about freedom and democracy, it's global. Yeah. Europe is an origin of those Enlightenment values, and to see systems to protect those human natures should be at the forefront and to protect those most precious values. It's not simply about a sort of hard power struggle. This is about the most fundamental and precious human values in every society universally. And now we are under this threat of a rising digital authoritarian China. We should be working together, yeah, to meet the challenge of our time.
Professor Xiao Qiang, thank you for your time and knowledge that you shared with us. Also, thank you, our viewers, for staying online. And let's hope that we will overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. We should talk about it as well, but maybe next time. And we will have a chance to discuss all of this soon, I would say face-to-face, maybe on Forum 2000 during the autumn. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good to see you.